The first thing I noticed when I came to was the chill. My arms were tied tightly behind my back, the rough bark of a tree digging into my skin. My head pounded, and my throat felt like sandpaper. The sound of leaves rustling in the breeze and distant chirping of birds made the scene feel surreal. As my vision cleared, I tried to move, but the ropes held firm. Panic crept in as flashes of the previous night came back in fragments. Drinks with friends, laughter, then nothing. I strained to remember who could have done this to me. But the answer hit like a freight train when I saw the envelope taped to a nearby rock. Scribbled across the front in familiar handwriting was my name, Jack. It was my wife's handwriting. With great effort, I managed to free one arm. My hand shook as I tore open the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the words scrawled hastily. "Don't follow me. I need space. You'll thank me later. Lisa." Confusion mixed with anger. Lisa, my wife of 8 years, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone? Why would she do this? As I stumbled through the woods, I replayed every moment from the last week. Lisa had been distant, distracted. I chalked it up to stress, but this was something else entirely. When I finally made it back to the road, my phone was gone. No wallet, no keys. Just me, my tattered clothes, and the burning questions echoing in my head. A kind passerby gave me a ride home, where the real shock awaited. The house was eerily silent. The usual hum of Lisa's favorite music, the scent of her morning coffee, gone. I ran to the bedroom. Her closet was nearly empty, drawers cleared out. She'd taken what she needed and vanished. But it wasn't until I found the stack of mail on the kitchen counter that my world truly imploded. One envelope was torn open, the contents scattered. Bank statements. Every account had been drained, tens of thousands of dollars gone in a single day. My chest tightened, and I struggled to breathe. Lisa had taken everything. But why? That's when I saw the email, still open on her laptop. It was from an unknown sender, but the subject line stopped me cold. Tonight's client details. I clicked, my hands trembling. The email contained a name, an address, and an amount, $2,500. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Lisa wasn't just leaving me. She was living a double life, as an escort. The betrayal, the lies, the secret life I'd never suspected. It was all too much. But as the anger burned through the shock, one thought became crystal clear. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She thought she could take everything from me, but she was wrong. The next morning, the house felt like a hollow shell. Every corner reminded me of Lisa, our shared life, our memories, and now, the lies hidden beneath it all. I couldn't sit still. The betrayal gnawed at me, every second adding fuel to the fire of my anger. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. The laptop she'd left behind became my starting point. I sifted through her emails, digging for any clue that would explain how she'd managed to lead a double life right under my nose. The inbox was surprisingly clean, too clean, almost as if she'd scrubbed it deliberately before leaving. But I wasn't giving up that easily. I opened her browser history, my breath catching when I saw the website she'd visited. A handful of escort directories, encrypted messaging apps, and even a fake booking calendar hidden under a benign label, work schedule. Each discovery hit like a blow to the chest. The woman I thought I knew had built an entirely separate existence, one she'd managed to keep hidden for years. Among the notes in her calendar, one entry stood out. Client, Red Orchid Hotel, 7 p.m. The appointment was for tonight. My hands clenched into fists. If she thought she could just walk away and continue this life, she was sorely mistaken. I spent the afternoon planning. First, I needed to confirm that she was still in town. I called a private investigator I knew from a friend. Ethan, a no-nonsense guy with a knack for finding people who didn't want to be found. "You're sure about this?" Ethan asked after I explained the situation. "Just find her," I said through gritted teeth. "I don't care how." While Ethan worked, I revisited the bank statements she'd left behind. The withdrawals weren't random. They followed a pattern. Large amounts transferred to an account I didn't recognize, and smaller ones used for luxury purchases I'd never seen. Jewelry, designer clothes, hotel stays. All things I'd assumed were gifts for me. My stomach turned as I realized I'd been funding her double life without even knowing it. By evening, Ethan called back. "I've got a lead," he said. She checked into the Red Orchid Hotel this afternoon. Room 314. My pulse quickened. She was there, just as her calendar had said. Thanks, I replied. Send me your invoice. Careful, Jack, Ethan warned. Don't do anything stupid. But caution wasn't on my mind as I drove to the hotel. Every mile felt like a step closer to reclaiming the power Lisa had taken from me. When I arrived, the sleek facade of the Red Orchid loomed before me, its glowing sign a stark reminder of her betrayal. I parked across the street, watching the entrance like a hawk. Minutes felt like hours as I waited for any sign of her. Finally, she appeared. Lisa, dressed to the nines in a black dress I didn't recognize, her hair swept into an elegant bun. She looked stunning, and every bit the stranger she'd become. She was with a man, mid-40s, wealthy-looking, his hand resting casually on her lower back as they entered the lobby. My blood boiled as I watched them disappear inside. Part of me wanted to storm in and confront her right then and there. But I held back, knowing that I needed to play this smart. Instead, I waited until she returned to her car hours later. Alone, she didn't see me as she slid into the driver's seat and pulled away. But I was already following her, my mind racing with plans for what came next. Back at the house, I began gathering everything I could use against her. Emails, photos, financial records. If she wanted to destroy my life, I'd make sure she knew what it felt like. But as I pieced together the evidence, a nagging question lingered. How had she gotten away with this for so long? And what else was she hiding? The answers, I suspected, would only make the betrayal cut deeper. The next morning, I woke with a renewed sense of purpose. Lisa thought she'd outsmarted me, but I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. I sifted through everything I'd gathered the night before: emails, receipts, bank statements. The sheer depth of her deception was staggering. But I wasn't overwhelmed, I was focused. One thing stood out among the records: Lisa's secret account. The transfers from our joint savings had all funneled into it, a tidy sum that she must have thought was safe. I smiled grimly. She might have emptied my account, but she'd underestimated how much I knew about her. I had the login information saved in an old file on my computer, a relic from the days when we'd trusted each other implicitly. I accessed the account with ease. The balance was jaw-dropping, over $200,000. My mind reeled. How long had she been doing this? And how much of it had come from strangers who thought they could buy her? I didn't hesitate. With a few clicks, I began transferring the funds to my personal account, watching as the numbers dwindled. By the time I was finished, her secret stash was empty. But I wasn't done yet. I left a single note in the transaction history. Revenge is expensive. Jack. As the transfer completed, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. Got something you'll want to see, he said. Go on. I replied, my curiosity piqued. She's been meeting someone regularly, a guy named Brent. He's not just another client. From what I can tell, he's her handler. The word hit me like a slap. Handler? My wife was deep in this world, far more than I'd imagined. Ethan continued. Brent's a middleman. He coordinates meetings, takes a cut of her earnings, and keeps things running smoothly. If you want answers, he's the guy to talk to. Where can I find him? I asked, my voice cold. Tonight. Downtown lounge called Velvet Ember. Be careful, Jack. That evening, I prepared for the confrontation. I wasn't just angry. I was determined to take control of a situation that had spiraled out of my hands. The Velvet Ember was exactly the kind of place Lisa would frequent, sleek, upscale, and full of people with too much money and too few morals. I spotted Brent almost immediately. He was sitting at the bar, sipping a cocktail like he didn't have a care in the world. I approached him slowly, my heart pounding. Brent, right? I asked, keeping my tone casual. He glanced at me, his expression guarded. Who's asking? Jack, I said evenly. Lisa's husband. His face betrayed a flicker of recognition, but he quickly masked it with a smirk. Ah, the husband. Didn't think I'd ever meet you. I'll make this quick, I said, leaning closer. You're going to tell me everything. How long this has been going on, who else is involved, and why you thought you could get away with it. Brent chuckled, taking a sip of his drink. You've got guts, I'll give you that. But you're playing a dangerous game. I'm not playing, I snapped. And neither are you. Talk, or I'll make sure your little operation comes crashing down. His smirk faded. Fine, he said, setting his glass down. Lisa's been in this for about 3 years. She's good at what she does, clients love her, and she's made a lot of money. But she's not the only one. What do you mean? I demanded. There's a network, Brent explained. High-end escorts, all connected through people like me. We keep things discreet, keep the money flowing. Lisa's just one piece of the puzzle. The scope of it all was staggering. Lisa wasn't just cheating. She was part of an entire system, one that thrived on secrecy and manipulation. Why tell me this? I asked. Because you're a wild card, Brent said. And I don't like wild cards. If you're going to burn it all down, I'd rather not be collateral damage. I left the lounge with a mix of anger and determination. Brent had given me enough to confirm what I already suspected. Lisa's betrayal wasn't just personal. It was calculated. But now, I had the leverage I needed to bring her world crashing down. When I got home, I found Lisa waiting in the living room, her expression unreadable. Jack, she began hesitantly. We need to talk. No, I said firmly, meeting her gaze. You need to listen. Her eyes widened, but she stayed silent as I sat across from her, ready to lay everything out. Lisa shifted uneasily in her seat, her gaze darting between me and the table. She looked guilty, defensive, and most importantly, cornered. I know everything, I said, my voice cold. The clients, the money, the handler. Brent told me everything. Her head snapped up, her eyes widening in shock. Brent? What? How do you even know about him? I didn't just stumble on this, I replied. You tied me to a tree and tried to disappear, Lisa. Did you really think I wouldn't dig until I found the truth? Her face crumpled, but I wasn't letting her tears sway me. Don't you dare cry, I said sharply. You don't get to play the victim here. I didn't want you to find out like this, she whispered. How considerate, I said with a bitter laugh. You're so thoughtful, Lisa. Draining our accounts, leading a double life, lying to my face for years. Truly, you're the picture of selflessness. Her tears turned to frustration. You don't understand, she snapped. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Then explain it to me. I shot back. Indictame, Lisa. Tell me why you thought this was okay. She hesitated, her hands trembling. It started as a way to make extra money, she admitted. At first, it was just one client. Easy money, no strings attached. But then it snowballed. Brent saw potential in me, and I got in too deep. You mean you like the money? I said, my voice dripping with disdain. And the attention. Her silence spoke volumes. Did you ever plan on stopping? I asked. I tried, she said quietly. But by then, it wasn't just about me. Brent had leverage, and the money was too good to walk away from. I leaned forward, my anger boiling over. You risked everything. Our marriage, our future, because you were too selfish to quit. Lisa's expression hardened. Don't act like you're blameless, Jack, she said, her voice rising. You were so busy with work, so focused on everything but us. I felt invisible, like I didn't matter. Are you seriously blaming me for this? I demanded, my voice incredulous. I'm saying it's not black and white, she replied. You ignored me, and I made bad choices. But it wasn't all one-sided. Her words stung, but I refused to let her shift the blame. You had options, Lisa, I said. You could have talked to me. You could have left. But instead, you lied and betrayed me. She looked away, tears streaming down her face. You're right, she said finally. I made mistakes, but I'm still your wife, Jack. Doesn't that mean anything? Her plea hung in the air, but I felt no sympathy. Not anymore, I said firmly. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. I stood, pulling out my phone. You have until the end of the week to leave. After that, I don't care where you go or what you do, but you won't do it here. Her face crumpled. Jack, please. Don't beg, I interrupted. You didn't think about us when you were sneaking around. You don't get to cry about it now. Lisa sat in stunned silence as I walked to the door. This isn't over, I added without looking back. Not by a long shot. That night, I called Ethan again. I need more, I told him. Names, connections, anything that ties Brent to the bigger picture. Ethan hesitated. You sure about this, Jack? You're already in deep. Just find what you can, I said firmly. I'm not stopping now. As I hung up, I felt a strange sense of clarity. Lisa's betrayal was just the beginning. The network she'd been part of needed to be exposed, and I wasn't going to stop until I brought it all crashing down. I wasn't just out for revenge. I was out for justice. The days that followed were a whirlwind of discovery and planning. while Lisa kept to herself, either out of guilt or fear. I immersed myself in the growing web of lies and corruption she had been a part of. Ethan came through with more intel. "Brent's not just a handler," he said over the phone. "He's part of a larger ring that caters to high-end clients. These aren't just random encounters. They're coordinated, high-stakes operations." The scale of it all was staggering. Brent wasn't just managing Lisa. He was part of a network that extended far beyond her, involving dozens of women and even more powerful clients. "There's more," Ethan added. "Brent's been using shell companies to launder money. If you're looking for leverage, this is it. Send me everything," I replied, my resolve hardening. With the documents Ethan provided, I began to connect the dots. Transactions, names, locations. It all painted a picture of a deeply entrenched operation that thrived on secrecy and manipulation. Among the names listed in the transactions, one stood out: Jonathan Crane. Crane was a prominent businessman in the city, known for his philanthropy and spotless public image. Seeing his name tied to Brent's network felt like finding the thread that could unravel the entire operation. I shared the information with Kara, the journalist who had helped me before. She whistled low as she reviewed the files. "This is big, Jack. Really big. But if we're going to go after someone like Crane, we need more than this." "What do you suggest?" I asked. "A direct link," she said. "Something undeniable. If you can get that, we can blow this story wide open." Getting closer to Crane meant taking a risk, but I wasn't about to back down. Using the intel Ethan provided, I tracked Crane's patterns, his favorite haunts, his public appearances, even his social media activity. It wasn't long before I found my opportunity. Crane was hosting a gala in 2 days, a fundraiser for one of his many charities. If he was as untouchable as he seemed, the gala would be the perfect place to catch him off guard. Meanwhile, Lisa seemed to sense the shift in my focus. One evening, as I worked late in the study, she knocked hesitantly on the door. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice subdued. I didn't look up from my laptop. "I'm Busse." "Please, Jack," she said, stepping inside. "I know I've hurt you, but I want to make things right." Her words sparked a bitter laugh. "Make things right? Lisa, you don't get to fix this with an apology. Do you even understand what you've done?" She flinched, but didn't back down. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to help." Her offer caught me off guard. "Help? Why would I trust you to do that?" "Because I know how Brent operates," she said, her voice trembling. "I know his patterns, his weak points. If you're going after him, you'll need someone on the inside." Her plea was unexpected, but it also felt calculated. "Why now?" I asked. "Why do you care?" "Because I want to stop running," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I want to end this, Jack. For both of us." Her sincerity was difficult to gauge, but her knowledge could be valuable. After a long silence, I nodded. "Fine. But if you cross me again, Lisa, there won't be a second chance." She nodded, her relief evident. "Thank you." That night, I couldn't sleep. Lisa's involvement complicated everything, but it also gave me an edge I hadn't expected. The night of the gala arrived quickly. Dressed in a borrowed suit, I blended in easily with the crowd of socialites and business elites. Lisa had provided detailed instructions on how to approach Crane without raising suspicion. "Don't confront him directly," she had warned. "He's too smart for that. Focus on his assistant. She handles all the dirty work." Following her advice, I struck up a conversation with Crane's assistant, a sharp-looking woman named Evelyn. She was polite but guarded, clearly used to deflecting questions about her boss. "You must be very busy working with someone like Crane," I said casually. "It's a rewarding job," she replied smoothly. "Mr. Crane is very dedicated to his work." Her rehearsed answers didn't give much away, but I noticed the way her eyes darted toward a locked briefcase by her side. As the evening progressed, I waited for my chance. When Evelyn stepped away to make a phone call, I approached the briefcase, my heart pounding. Inside, I found exactly what I was looking for: ledgers, contracts, and encrypted files that tied Crane directly to Brent's network. I snapped photos of everything, careful not to disturb the contents, and slipped away before anyone noticed. The drive home was a blur, my mind racing with possibilities. With this evidence, I could finally bring down the entire operation. Lisa was waiting when I arrived, her expression a mix of anxiety and determination. "Did you get it?" she asked. I nodded, holding up the camera. "We've got him." The next morning, I met with Kara at a local cafe to review the photos. The evidence I'd gathered from Crane's briefcase was substantial, but Kara's cautious demeanor told me there was more work to do. "This is solid," she said, flipping through the images. "But we're going to need corroboration. If Crane's as powerful as he seems, he'll claim this was planted or taken out of context. Then we find someone to back it up," I replied. "Karanadith. I'll reach out to some contacts. In the meantime, lay low. If Crane or Brent finds out what you've got, they'll come for you." Her warning stayed with me as I left the cafe. I wasn't naive. I knew the risks of taking on men like Crane, but the thought of backing down wasn't an option. Back at home, Lisa was waiting anxiously. "What did Kara say?" she asked. "She thinks it's a good start," I said. "But we need more. Someone inside the operation who's willing to talk." Lisa hesitated, her hands fidgeting. "There's someone," she said finally. "Brent's second-in-command, Kyle. He handles a lot of the logistics, and he's not as loyal as Brent thinks." "How do you know that?" I asked, my skepticism clear. "Because he tried to recruit me to cut Brent out," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Her confession made my stomach churn, but I kept my emotions in check. "Can you reach him?" "I think so," she said. "But it won't be easy. Kyle's paranoid, and he'll want something in return." Her words hung in the air, but I nodded. "Do it. Whatever it takes. We need him on our side." That evening, Lisa made the call, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Kyle," she said when he picked up. "It's Lisa. We need to talk." There was a long pause before he replied, his tone cautious. "Why now?" "Because I have leverage," she said, "and it's in your best interest to listen." The meeting was set for the next night at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The location felt like a cliché from a crime movie, but I wasn't about to argue. Lisa insisted on going alone, but I refused. "If this goes south, I'm not letting you take the fall," I said firmly. She didn't argue, which only made me more uneasy. The warehouse was dark and foreboding, its broken windows and rusted doors adding to the tension. Kyle was already there when we arrived, his lean frame silhouetted against the dim light of a single hanging bulb. "This better be good," he said, his eyes darting between me and Lisa. "It is," Lisa replied. "But we need something from you first, proof that Crane and Brent are tied together." Kyle laughed bitterly. "You think I'm just going to hand that over? What's in it for me?" Lisa stepped forward, her voice firm. "If Crane and Brent go down, you get to walk away clean. No competition, no loose ends." Kyle hesitated, clearly weighing his options. "And if I say no? Then we burn it all," I said, my voice cold. "And you go down with them." The tension was palpable, but Kyle finally relented. "Fine," he said, pulling a flash drive from his pocket. "This has everything. Emails, transactions, meeting notes. If it gets out, they're finished." Lisa took the drive, her hands trembling slightly. "You're making the right choice," she said. Kyle smirked. "We'll see." As we left the warehouse, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd just stepped into something even bigger than we realized. Kyle's cooperation was a gamble, and I wasn't sure how much we could trust him. Back at home, Lisa handed me the flash drive, her expression a mix of relief and apprehension. "This is it, isn't it?" she asked. "It's a start," I said. "But we're not done yet." The next day, Kara and I combed through the contents of the drive. It was a goldmine, detailed records of Crane and Brent's operations, including high-profile clients and offshore accounts. "This is enough to bury them," Kara said, her excitement barely contained. "Once this goes public, there's no coming back." But as I looked at the names on the screen, a new question arose. How far was I willing to go to see this through? That evening, Lisa approached me again, her face pale. "Jack," she said hesitantly, "I need to tell you something." "What now?" I asked, my patience thin. "There's someone else involved," she admitted. "Someone bigger than Crane. And if you expose this, they'll come for you." Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I refused to back down. "Let them," I said firmly. "I'm not stopping until the truth comes out." Lisa's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "Then we do it together." For the first time in weeks, her words felt genuine. And for the first time, I wondered if we might actually have a chance to survive this together. The next morning, Kara called with urgency in her voice. "Jack, the flash drive is explosive, but it's also dangerous. Some of the names on this list aren't just clients, they're power players." "What kind of power players?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "Politicians, executives, law enforcement. If this goes public, they'll do everything in their power to shut it down and to shut us up. Kara's warning weighed heavily on me. Up until now, I'd seen this as a fight against Crane and Brent, but the names on that drive painted a much darker picture. Lisa's earlier admission that someone bigger was involved suddenly made a lot more sense. I hung up and went to the kitchen, where Lisa was sipping coffee. "Who's the bigger threat you mentioned last night?" I asked. She hesitated, clearly torn about whether to tell me. "His name's Vincent Drake," she said finally. "He's a silent partner in Brent's operation. No one sees him, but everyone answers to him." "What does he do?" I pressed. "Everything," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "He funds the network, protects the clients, and eliminates threats. If you go after Crane, Drake will come for you." Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I refused to let fear dictate my actions. "Then we expose him too," I said firmly. Lisa looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "You don't understand, Jack. Drake doesn't play by the rules. If you cross him, he'll destroy you." "Let him try," I said, my resolve hardening. That afternoon, I met with Kara again to discuss the next steps. "If Vincent Drake is involved, we need proof," she said. "Otherwise, this will look like a smear campaign." "I'll find it," I replied. Lisa said he stays in the shadows, but there has to be a way to connect him to Crane and Brent. Kara frowned, her concern evident. "Be careful, Jack. This isn't just about revenge anymore. It's a fight for survival." Lisa and I spent the evening digging through the flash drive, looking for anything that tied Vincent Drake to the operation. It was slow, tedious work, but eventually we found a thread, a series of payments from an offshore account tied to Drake's alias. "This is it," I said, my pulse quickening. "If we can trace these payments to Brent and Crane, we can expose the whole operation." But as we celebrated the breakthrough, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop now, or face the consequences." My stomach dropped as I read the message, my mind racing. Was this from Drake? Someone working for him? Lisa saw the text over my shoulder and paled. "He knows," she whispered. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "What does he do to people who cross him?" I asked. Her voice trembled as she replied. "He makes them disappear." The weight of her words hung in the air, but I refused to back down. "We've come too far to stop now," I said. Lisa nodded reluctantly, though her fear was palpable. The next day, Kara called again with news. "I've got a source who used to work for Drake," she said. "They're willing to talk, but only if we can guarantee their safety." "Set it up," I said. "We'll meet wherever they feel safe." The meeting was arranged for that evening, at a nondescript motel outside of town. Lisa insisted on coming with me, despite my protests. The source, a middle-aged man named Alan, was visibly nervous as he greeted us. "I don't have much time," he said, his eyes darting around the room. "If Drake finds out I'm talking, I'm as good as dead." "We just need the truth," I said. "Who is Vincent Drake, and how is he tied to Crane and Brent?" Alan hesitated, then began to speak. "Drake's the architect of the whole operation. Crane's just his puppet, and Brent's his enforcer. Everything flows through Drake: money, clients, protection. He keeps the system running." "Why hasn't anyone stopped him?" Lisa asked. "Because he owns everyone," Alan replied bitterly. "Politicians, cops, judges, you name it, no one will touch him." Alan handed me a folder, his hand shaking. "This is everything you need. But be careful. If you go public, you'll be putting a target on your back." "Thank you," I said, taking the folder. "We'll make sure this sees the light of day." As we left the motel, Lisa clutched my arm tightly. "Jack, this is bigger than we thought. Are you sure we're ready for this?" I nodded, my resolve unshaken. "It's not just about us anymore. This is about justice, for everyone they've hurt." That night, as I reviewed Alan's folder, the scope of Vincent Drake's power became painfully clear. But so did the cracks in his empire. For the first time, I felt like we had a real chance to take him down. The contents of Alan's folder were overwhelming. Names, dates, payments. Everything pointed to Vincent Drake as the mastermind of the entire operation. It was all there, but bringing him down would require precision. Kara was ecstatic when I handed over the folder. "This is it, Jack," she said, her voice brimming with excitement. "This connects all the dots." But her enthusiasm was tempered with caution. "Drake won't go down quietly," she warned. "The moment this goes public, he'll fight back with everything he's got." Lisa and I returned home that evening, the weight of our next steps heavy on our shoulders. "We're so close," Lisa said, her voice wavering. "But I'm scared, Jack. What if this backfires?" "It won't," I said firmly, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. We got the truth on our side. Her doubt lingered, but she nodded. "What do we do next?" "Kara's going to prep the story," I explained. "Once it's ready, we'll release it to every major outlet. Drake won't be able to suppress it if it's everywhere at once." Lisa hesitated. "Jack, there's something I haven't told you." I froze, my patience thinning. "What now, Lisa?" She looked down, guilt written all over her face. "Drake knows about me. He's been keeping tabs on me for months. If this comes out, he won't just come after you. He'll come after me too." Her admission sent a chill down my spine. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" "Because I didn't think it mattered," she said, her voice breaking. "But now, I'm not so sure." Her fear was palpable, but it only strengthened my resolve. "Then we hit him hard and fast," I said. "No warning, no time for him to retaliate." The next morning, I met with Kara again to finalize the story. The folder's contents had been cross-referenced, verified, and supplemented with the evidence from the flash drive. "This is bulletproof," Kara said confidently. "Once it's out, Drake won't be able to talk his way out of it." We set the release date for 2 days later, giving Kara enough time to coordinate with other journalists and ensure maximum exposure. Lisa, meanwhile, busied herself with preparations. She packed a bag with essentials, just in case we needed to disappear quickly. "I hate this," she admitted. "Living like we're fugitives." "It's temporary," I said. "Once Drake's empire falls, we'll be free." That night, as I sat in the living room, my phone buzzed with another message from an unknown number. "You're making a mistake, Jack. Walk away while you still can." I showed the message to Lisa, who paled. "It's him," she whispered. "Drake." I didn't reply, but the threat hung heavy in the air. The following day, Ethan called with an update. "I've been keeping an eye on Drake's people," he said. "They're scrambling. Word must have leaked about what you're planning." "Good," I said. "Let them sweat." "Be careful," Ethan warned. "Desperate people are dangerous." His warning stayed with me as the clock ticked down to the release. That evening, Lisa and I shared a quiet dinner. The tension between us momentarily eased. "Do you think we'll ever be normal again?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "But we'll figure it out." Her hand brushed mine, a tentative gesture that felt like a small step toward rebuilding what we'd lost. As we cleared the table, the sound of shattering glass made us freeze. I rushed to the living room, where a brick lay among the shards of the front window. Attached to it was a note. "This is your last warning." Lisa stood behind me, trembling. "Jack, we need to call the police." "No," I said firmly. "Drake probably has half the force on his payroll. We can't trust anyone but ourselves." Her fear was evident, but she didn't argue. "What do we do?" she asked. "We stick to the plan," I said. "This ends tomorrow." That night, sleep was impossible. Every sound outside felt like a threat, every shadow a potential danger. But I refused to let fear win. The next morning, Kara called with one final update. "The story is live," she said. "It's out there, Jack. There's no turning back now." I hung up, a mix of relief and dread washing over me. The truth was out, but the battle was far from over. The hours after the story's release felt like an eternity. Kara had coordinated with multiple outlets, ensuring the exposé spread like wildfire. Social media erupted with outrage as people shared the revelations about Vincent Drake's empire. Headlines blared, high-profile executive tied to criminal network, exclusive, the man behind the mask of corruption. Lisa and I watched the chaos unfold from the safety of our living room, our nerves stretched thin. Every second felt like waiting for the other shoe to drop. By midday, Drake issued a public statement denying all allegations. Dressed in a crisp suit, his expression calm, he addressed the media with practiced ease. "These claims are baseless and defamatory," he said. "I intend to pursue legal action against those responsible for this smear campaign." His confidence was infuriating, but Kara assured me it was a facade. "The evidence is airtight," she said. "He's just trying to buy time." Despite her reassurance, tension lingered. Lisa couldn't sit still, pacing the room and wringing her hands. "What if he finds us, Jack? What if he—" She trailed off, her voice trembling. "He won't," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure. We've already exposed him. Going after us now would only prove he's guilty. As the day wore on, more names surfaced in connection to Drake's operation. Politicians, corporate executives, even members of law enforcement were implicated. The backlash was swift and severe. Protests erupted outside Crane's corporate headquarters, demanding accountability and justice. But while the public rallied against the corruption, I couldn't shake the feeling that Drake wasn't done. That night, Ethan called with troubling news. Drake's people are moving, he said. They've been seen at several of his properties, clearing out documents and hard drives. He's covering his tracks. What about Crane and Brent? I asked. Crane's gone underground, and Brent's lying low, Ethan replied. But Drake's the real threat. He's still pulling strings. Lisa overheard the conversation, her face pale. Jack, this is getting dangerous, she said. We've already done our part. Let the authorities handle the rest. I can't just walk away, I said. Not when he's still out there. Her fear was evident, but she didn't argue. Instead, she reached for my hand, a gesture of solidarity that surprised me. The next day, Kara called with a grim update. Jack, I've received several threats since the story went live. Someone even tried to break into my office last night. My stomach clenched. Are you okay? I'm fine, she said. But this proves we're rattling them. We need to stay ahead of them, or they'll find a way to silence us. Kara's words fueled my determination. That evening, I reviewed the files one last time, looking for anything we might have missed. One detail caught my attention, a series of payments to a private security firm. The amounts were massive, far exceeding what would be necessary for legitimate business. Lisa, I called out, do you know anything about Drake's private security? She hesitated, then nodded. He uses them for cleanup. If something goes wrong, they handle it. The implication was chilling. Do you think they're coming for us? I don't know, she admitted. But if they are, we need to be ready. That night, I set up makeshift defenses around the house, locks, cameras, anything that might buy us time if someone tried to break in. Lisa stayed close, her anxiety palpable. Jack, she said quietly, if something happens to us, I just want you to know that I'm sorry. Her words caught me off guard. For what? For everything, she said, tears welling in her eyes. For betraying you, for dragging you into this mess. You didn't deserve any of it. Her apology felt genuine, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of the woman I'd fallen in love with years ago. We'll get through this, I said, though my voice wavered. Together. The night passed without incident, but neither of us slept. The tension was unbearable, every creak of the house making us jump. When morning came, the news brought a glimmer of hope. Several of Drake's associates had been arrested, their cooperation potentially leading to more charges. But the man himself remained untouchable, his power shielding him from the fallout, for now. As Lisa and I watched the reports, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. We'd struck a blow, but the fight wasn't over. Drake's empire was cracking, but until it crumbled completely, we couldn't let our guard down. The next morning, the tension was thicker than ever. Despite the arrests of some of Vincent Drake's associates, he remained a looming shadow, untouched by the chaos unraveling around him. I kept checking the news, hoping for updates. Kara's expose had ignited a firestorm, but Drake's name was conspicuously absent from any arrest warrants. It was as if he were insulated by an invisible wall of power. Lisa noticed my frustration. He's not invincible, Jack, she said softly. You've already proven that by exposing him. But he's still out there, I replied. And until he's brought down, none of us are safe. By midday, things took a darker turn. Ethan called with an urgent warning. Jack, I just got word from one of my sources. Drake's people know where you are. My blood ran cold. How? I've been careful. They've got resources you can't imagine. Ethan cut me off. They're watching you. You need to leave now. Lisa overheard the conversation and immediately began gathering essentials. We can't stay here, Jack. If they know where we are, we're sitting ducks. I hesitated, my pride warring with my fear. Running won't solve anything, I said. Staying here could get us killed. Lisa shot back, her voice trembling. Please, Jack, let's go. Reluctantly, I agreed. We packed quickly, grabbing only what was necessary, and left the house. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, every passing car and shadowed window making my skin crawl. Ethan had arranged a safe house on the outskirts of the city, a secluded cabin surrounded by dense woods. It was far from ideal, but it offered a semblance of security. The cabin was small and sparse, but it was enough. Lisa immediately began securing the doors and windows while I set up the cameras I'd brought from the house. "This feels like a war zone," she muttered, her nerves fraying. "It is," I replied grimly. "And we're on the front lines." That evening, Kara called with another update. "Drake's people are scrambling to discredit the story," she said. "They've already leaked fake documents claiming the evidence was fabricated." "Is anyone buying it?" I asked. "Not yet," she replied. "But it's only a matter of time before they shift the narrative. We need more evidence to keep the pressure on." I racked my brain for anything we might have overlooked. Alan's folder, the flash drive, Kyle's testimony. It all pointed to Drake, but there was no smoking gun that tied him directly to the criminal activities. Then Lisa spoke up, her voice hesitant. "There's one thing we haven't tried." "What?" I asked, turning to her. "Drake keeps everything important on a personal server," she said. "It's untraceable, but if we could access it, it would have everything: transactions, communications, even the names of his clients." "And how do we find it?" I asked. She hesitated. "I know where it is, but it won't be easy." Lisa explained that the server was housed in a secure office building Drake owned downtown. Breaking into it would be risky, but it was our best shot at getting the evidence we needed. "It's a fortress," she warned. "Guards, cameras, the works. We'll need a plan." "I'll handle it," I said firmly. "No," she replied. "We do this together." That night, we planned the operation meticulously. Lisa's insider knowledge was invaluable, but the risk was undeniable. If we got caught, Drake wouldn't just retaliate. He'd destroy us. As we prepared, I couldn't help but notice the change in Lisa. The fear and guilt that had once consumed her were replaced by determination. She was fighting not just for herself, but for both of us. When the time came, we left the cabin under the cover of darkness. The drive to the city was tense, every mile feeling like a countdown to the point of no return. The office building loomed ahead, its sleek exterior hiding the secrets we were about to uncover. "This is it," Lisa said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. I nodded, my resolve unshaken. "Let's finish this." The towering office building gleamed in the moonlight, a monolith of glass and steel that symbolized Vincent Drake's untouchable power. But tonight, we planned to shatter that illusion. Lisa and I parked a block away, out of sight from the building's security cameras. She handed me a small earpiece, her fingers brushing mine briefly. "We stay in constant contact," she said. "If anything goes wrong, we abort." "Got it," I replied, though I had no intention of leaving empty-handed. Lisa led the way to a side entrance she knew wasn't as heavily monitored. "Drake uses this for VIP clients," she explained. "The cameras here are basic, no motion sensors, just fixed angles." We slipped inside, the dimly lit corridor eerily silent. My pulse raced as Lisa navigated the layout with practiced ease. The server room was on the top floor, but the elevators were guarded by keycard access. Lisa pulled a card from her pocket, holding it up with a faint smile. "Brent always left spares lying around," she said. The elevator ride felt like an eternity, the silence amplifying every creak and shift of the cables. When the doors opened, we stepped into a pristine hallway lined with frosted glass doors. "This way," Lisa whispered, leading me toward the server room. The door was locked, as expected, but Lisa quickly bypassed it with a small electronic device. "Brent taught me a few tricks," she said, her tone bittersweet. Inside, the server room hummed with the sound of cooling fans. Rows of servers stretched out before us, each one blinking with activity. "Which one is it?" I asked. Lisa pointed to a terminal at the far end of the room. "That's the main hub. Everything flows through there." As she connected a flash drive to the terminal, I kept watch by the door, my ears straining for any sign of movement. "It's encrypted," Lisa said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "This might take a while." Minutes felt like hours as she worked, the tension in the room suffocating. Suddenly, a faint beep signaled her success. "I'm in," she said, her voice triumphant. "Downloading everything now." Before I could respond, the faint sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. "Someone's coming," I hissed, moving to lock the door. Lisa's fingers moved faster, her focus unshaken. "I just need another minute," she whispered. The footsteps grew louder, stopping just outside the door. My heart pounded as I pressed my ear against the wood, straining to hear. A voice crackled over a radio. All clear on the top floor. Returning to base. The footsteps retreated, but my relief was short-lived. We're on borrowed time, I said. How much longer? Done, Lisa said, pulling the flash drive free. Let's go. We slipped out of the server room, retracing our steps to the elevator. Every corner felt like a potential ambush, but we made it to the ground floor without incident. As we exited the building, the cool night air hit me like a wave of relief. But the sense of victory was fleeting. We had the evidence, but now we had to get it to Kara before Drake's people realized what we'd done. Drive, I said as we climbed into the car. Fast. Lisa didn't need to be told twice. She sped through the empty streets, her hands gripping the wheel tightly. Back at the safe house, we plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The files were overwhelming. Financial records, client lists, correspondence, all tied directly to Drake. This is it, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of triumph and adrenaline. This is what we need to bring him down. Lisa nodded, her expression a mix of relief and exhaustion. Now what? Now we give it to Kara, I said. She'll know how to use it. As I prepared the files for transfer, Lisa sat beside me, her hand resting on my arm. Jack, she said softly. Thank you. For what? For not giving up, she replied. On this. On us. Her words caught me off guard, but I didn't respond. There was too much at stake to dwell on the past. That night, I sent the files to Kara with a simple message. This is the smoking gun. Let's finish this. The next morning, Kara called. Jack, this is it, she said, her excitement palpable. With this, we can blow the entire operation wide open. Her words filled me with hope, but also dread. Drake wouldn't go down without a fight, and I knew the storm was far from over. The morning after delivering the files to Kara, a strange sense of calm settled over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like we had the upper hand. But the calm was deceptive, an ominous quiet before the storm. Lisa paced the cabin, her nerves evident despite our recent success. What if Drake finds out we broke into his server? She asked. He will, I said bluntly. But by the time he does, it'll be too late. Kara's already working on the story. Lisa stopped pacing and turned to me. What if he comes after us before it goes live? He's not the kind of man who waits for the axe to fall. I couldn't deny the possibility. Drake had already proven how far he was willing to go to protect himself. Then we stay ready, I replied. No matter what happens. Later that afternoon, Kara called with an update. The files are incredible, Jack, she said. Drake's fingerprints are all over this. Offshore accounts, bribes, even blackmail. It's more than we could have hoped for. How soon can you publish? I asked. Tomorrow morning, she replied. I'm coordinating with multiple outlets. Once it's out, Drake won't be able to suppress it. Kara's confidence was reassuring, but Lisa remained uneasy. What if he finds us before then? She asked as we sat by the cabin's small fireplace that evening. We've come this far, I said, placing a reassuring hand on hers. We're not backing down now. She nodded, though the worry never left her face. That night, sleep was elusive. Every sound outside the cabin felt like a potential threat. The creak of a tree branch, the rustle of leaves. All of it kept me on edge. Lisa must have felt it too. She lay beside me, her eyes wide open in the dark. Jack, she whispered, what happens after this? What do you mean? I asked. When Drake's empire falls, she said softly. What happens to us? Her question caught me off guard. So much of my focus had been on the fight against Drake that I hadn't considered what came next for her, for me, for us. I don't know, I admitted, but we'll figure it out. The next morning, the calm shattered. A black SUV rolled up the dirt path leading to the cabin, its tinted windows gleaming in the sunlight. Lisa froze, her face draining of color. Jack, she whispered, it's them. I grabbed the baseball bat we'd kept by the door, my heart pounding. Stay behind me, I said. The SUV came to a stop, and two men stepped out, their suits immaculate despite the rugged surroundings. They approached the cabin slowly, their hands visible. Mr. Thompson, one of them called out, his voice calm but authoritative. We just want to talk. I didn't move. You've got the wrong guy, I said, my grip tightening on the bat. The man smiled faintly. No, we don't. You've caused quite a stir, Jack. Mr. Drake sent us to deliver a message. Tell him I'm not interested. I replied, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. The man's smile faded. This isn't a negotiation. Mr. Drake expects compliance. If you don't, he'll what? I interrupted, stepping forward. Ruin my life? He already tried that, and look where we are. The man's expression darkened. You're making a mistake, Mr. Thompson. Walk away while you still can. I stood my ground, my eyes locked on his. Tell Drake this. His time is up. The two men exchanged a glance before retreating to the SUV. As they drove off, Lisa let out a shaky breath. Do you think he'll come back? She asked. Probably, I admitted. But by then it'll be too late for them to stop us. Later that day, Carr called with a final update. The story is scheduled to go live at 8 a.m. tomorrow, she said. Once it's out, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. Lisa and I spent the evening in tense anticipation. Every hour felt like a countdown to a moment that would change everything. As the night wore on, Lisa sat beside me, her hand resting on mine. Jack, she said softly, thank you for not giving up on me. On us. Her words stirred something deep within me, a flicker of hope amid the chaos. We're not done yet, I replied, but we're close. The cabin was shrouded in tense silence as the clock ticked toward morning. Every passing minute brought us closer to 8 a.m., the moment when the world would finally see the truth about Vincent Drake. Lisa sat on the couch, her legs curled beneath her, clutching a mug of coffee like it was a lifeline. I stood by the window, scanning the woods for any sign of movement. Do you think they'll make a move before the story goes live? Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They'd be foolish to try, I replied, though the tightness in my chest betrayed my confidence. At precisely 8 o'clock, Kara sent a text. It's live. I opened the link, my breath catching as I read the headline. The Untouchable Empire. How Vincent Drake Built His Criminal Network. The article was damning. Every detail from the files we'd uncovered was laid bare. Offshore accounts, bribes, blackmail, and a client list that read like a who's who of the city's elite. As the exposé spread, the fallout was immediate. Social media exploded with outrage. News outlets picked up the story, and public figures scrambled to distance themselves from Drake. But the victory was short-lived. Less than an hour later, Kara called with a warning. Jack, Drake's lawyers just issued a statement. They're denying everything and threatening to sue for defamation. Let them, I said. The evidence speaks for itself. They're also targeting you, Kara added. They've leaked your name as the source of the files. My stomach dropped. What does that mean for us? It means you're a target, Kara said bluntly. Be careful, Jack. Drake doesn't play fair. I hung up and turned to Lisa, who had overheard the conversation. They know it's us, I said. Her face paled. What do we do now? We stay vigilant, I replied, and we wait for the authorities to act. By midday, the pressure on Drake was mounting. Protesters gathered outside his corporate offices, demanding accountability. Politicians called for investigations, and the FBI issued a statement confirming they were reviewing the allegations. But Drake himself remained silent, his absence from the public eye adding to the tension. That evening, the tension reached a breaking point. Ethan called with urgent news. Jack, Drake's people are on the move. They've been seen heading toward your cabin. My pulse quickened. How much time do we have? Not enough, Ethan replied. Get out of there now. Lisa and I sprang into action, grabbing the essentials and piling into the car. As we sped away from the cabin, my mind raced with questions. Where could we go? Would we ever be safe? I have a plan, I said, glancing at Lisa. But it's risky. What is it? She asked, her voice trembling. We draw them out, I said. If Drake's people are coming for us, we make sure they're exposed in the process. Lisa's eyes widened. Jack, that's dangerous. So is running, I replied. But this might be our only chance to end this. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded. I'm with you. We drove to a public park in the city, a place bustling with families and joggers. It was the last place anyone would expect us to go, and that was exactly the point. Lisa stayed by my side as I discreetly called Ethan. We're at Brookside Park, I said. If Drake's people show up, I want you to document everything. On it, Ethan replied. Stay safe. We waited, the minutes dragging like hours. Lisa clutched my arm tightly, her eyes scanning the crowd. "Do you think they'll come?" she whispered. "They will," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. Sure enough, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Two men stepped out, their eyes scanning the area before zeroing in on us. Lisa's grip tightened. "Jack, stay calm," I said. "They won't do anything in public." The men approached us slowly, their postures tense. One of them spoke, his voice low and menacing. "Mr. Thompson, you're causing quite a problem for our employer." "Good," I replied. "Maybe he should rethink his business practices." The man's jaw tightened. "This is your last chance to walk away." Before I could respond, Ethan appeared from the crowd, his camera trained on the scene. The man's expression faltered as he realized we weren't alone. "Smile," Ethan said dryly. "You're on camera." The tension was palpable, but the presence of witnesses forced the men to back off. "This isn't over," one of them muttered before retreating to the SUV. As the SUV sped away, I exhaled deeply, the weight of the confrontation hitting me all at once. Lisa leaned against me, her relief evident. "We did it," she said softly. "For now," I replied. "But the fight isn't over yet." The tension from the park encounter lingered as Lisa and I returned to the city, seeking temporary refuge at a hotel Ethan had arranged. The confrontation had been a calculated risk, but it had served its purpose, putting Drake's men on notice and ensuring witnesses were present. "You really think this will stop them?" Lisa asked as she sat on the edge of the bed, her voice laced with doubt. "It won't stop them," I admitted, "but it'll slow them down. They'll think twice before trying something in the open again." Ethan arrived an hour later, his camera bag slung over his shoulder. He handed me the footage from the park. "It's clear as day," he said. "Their faces, the SUV, the threats. It's all here." "Good," I said, reviewing the clips. "Kara can use this to add another layer to the story." "I already sent it to her," Ethan replied. "She's pushing for law enforcement to take action now that there's a direct threat on record." The weight of his words settled over the room. Lisa looked at me, her worry evident. "What if Drake's people don't wait for the system to catch up? Then we stay ahead of them," I said firmly. "We've come too far to back down now." Ethan nodded in agreement. "Drake's losing control. That makes him dangerous, but it also makes him desperate. Desperate people make mistakes." The following morning, Kara's update offered a glimmer of hope. "The footage from the park is blowing up online," she said over the phone. "People are demanding action, and the authorities are feeling the pressure." "What about Drake?" I asked. "He's still in hiding," Kara replied. "But the noose is tightening. His clients are scrambling, and some of them are flipping to save themselves." Among those flipping was Brent. Kara had confirmed he was cooperating with investigators, likely in exchange for immunity. While it stung that he might avoid jail time, his testimony was another nail in Drake's coffin. Lisa seemed relieved by the news. "If Brent's talking, it's only a matter of time before Drake goes down," she said. "Let's hope so," I replied, though a part of me remained skeptical. That afternoon, Ethan uncovered another piece of the puzzle. "Drake has a private estate outside the city," he said. "It's heavily secured, but there's activity there. More than usual." "Do you think he's there?" I asked. "Maybe," Ethan replied. "Or he's moving something important." The estate presented a tempting opportunity. If Drake was there, it might be the chance we needed to confront him directly. But it was a gamble, one that could backfire spectacularly. Lisa saw the conflict in my expression. "Jack, this could be our chance to end it," she said. "But it's risky." "I know," I said. "That's why we need to plan this carefully." Ethan, Lisa, and I spent hours strategizing. The goal wasn't to storm the estate, but to gather intel, proof that Drake was still actively orchestrating his empire. "This isn't just about taking him down," I said. "It's about making sure he can't rebuild once he's gone." Lisa nodded, her determination mirroring mine. Under the cover of darkness, we approached the estate. Ethan stayed back with a long-range camera, documenting everything from a safe distance. Lisa and I moved cautiously, using the wooded perimeter as cover. Through the trees, we saw the estate come into view. The sprawling mansion was lit up, with several luxury vehicles parked outside. "Looks like he's hosting a meeting," Lisa whispered. "Good," I replied. "The more we see, the more evidence we'll have." We crept closer, careful not to draw attention. Through the large windows, We could see men in suits gathered in the main hall, their expressions tense. Lisa tugged on my sleeve, pointing to a familiar figure near the center of the room. "That's him," she said, her voice barely audible. "Vincent Drake." My heart pounded as I locked eyes on the man who had orchestrated so much destruction. He looked calm, confident, a stark contrast to the chaos surrounding him. "Now we know where he is," I said, pulling back. "Let's get out of here before they notice us." As we retreated, the sound of barking dogs shattered the silence. My stomach dropped as flashlights cut through the darkness, voices shouting orders. "They know we're here," Lisa said, panic creeping into her voice. "Run," I said, grabbing her hand. We sprinted through the woods, the shouts and barking growing louder behind us. Ethan's voice crackled over the earpiece. "What's going on?" "They've got dogs," I panted. "We're trying to lose them." "Head west," Ethan said. "I've got the car ready." With Ethan's guidance, we managed to evade the search party and reach the car. As we sped away, my chest heaved with adrenaline and relief. "That was close," Lisa said, her voice trembling. "Too close," I replied. "But we got what we needed." The footage Ethan captured at the estate was a game-changer. Drake's presence, combined with the high-profile attendees and the coordinated activity at the mansion, painted a clear picture. Despite the public fallout, his operation was still active. Kara's voice buzzed over the phone that morning. "Jack, this is it. The footage, the documents, the testimony. It's airtight. Law enforcement can't ignore this anymore." "When do they act?" I asked. "They've issued warrants," she replied. "Drake's empire is crumbling. But Jack, be careful. If he knows he's cornered, he'll lash out." The warning came too late. As the news broke of the warrants, Ethan called in a panic. "Jack, they're coming for you." "Who?" I demanded. "Drake's men," he said. I intercepted a message. "They're headed to the hotel. You need to leave now." Lisa and I bolted into action, throwing our things into bags and racing to the car. As we pulled onto the highway, I couldn't help but glance in the rearview mirror, expecting to see the dark SUVs closing in. Lisa's knuckles were white as she gripped the dashboard. "Where do we go now?" "To Kara," I said. "We'll be safest with her." Kara had anticipated our arrival. She ushered us into her apartment, locking the door behind us. "You weren't followed, were you?" "I don't think so," I replied, though my heart hadn't stopped racing since we left the hotel. She led us to her home office, where her phone and laptop buzzed with nonstop updates. "The authorities are closing in on Drake," she said. "But he still has people on the inside. They're stalling." Ethan arrived shortly after, his expression grim. "Drake's desperate. He's cutting deals, trying to save himself. He won't get away with it," I said firmly. "Not this time." As if on cue, the news broke. Several of Drake's key associates had been arrested, including Crane and Brent. But Drake himself was still at large. Lisa's face paled as she watched the broadcast. "He's running," she said. "He's not going to wait for them to catch him." "Do you know where he'd go?" I asked. "There's a safe house he uses," she said. "A private property near the mountains. If he's anywhere, it's there." The thought of confronting Drake directly was daunting, but I couldn't ignore the opportunity. "We have to finish this," I said, looking at Lisa and Ethan. "You're insane," Ethan replied. "Let the authorities handle it." "They're stalling," I argued. "If we wait, he'll disappear for good." Lisa hesitated, then nodded. "If we're doing this, we need a plan." The drive to Drake's safe house was tense. The property was secluded, surrounded by dense forest and a high fence. From a distance, we spotted the telltale signs of activity. Lights in the windows, a few cars parked outside. "This is it," Lisa said, her voice steady despite the tension. Ethan stayed back with his camera, ready to document everything. Lisa and I approached cautiously, using the trees as cover. Through a window, we saw Drake pacing in the living room, his phone pressed to his ear. He looked more disheveled than I'd ever imagined, sweat beading on his brow, his calm facade shattered. "He's cornered," Lisa whispered. Drake's attention was diverted, giving us a chance to slip inside through an unlocked side door. The air was thick with tension as we crept through the house, careful not to make a sound. Finally, we reached the living room. Drake turned as we entered, his eyes widening in shock. "Well," he said, his voice dripping with disdain, "if it isn't the husband and his little accomplice." "You're done, Drake," I said, my voice cold. "The world knows who you are." Drake smirked, though the fear in his eyes betrayed him. "Do you think this changes anything? People like me don't fall. We adapt." "Not this time," Lisa said, stepping forward. "This time, you answer for what you've done." Drake's bravado faltered as Ethan appeared in the doorway, his camera trained on us. "The world is watching, Drake," Ethan said. "Smile for the camera." The sound of sirens cut through the tension, growing louder with each passing second. Drake's face twisted in panic as he realized the authorities were closing in. "You think this ends with me?" he spat. "There will always be another." The front door burst open, and law enforcement flooded the room, guns drawn. Drake raised his hands, his defiance crumbling as they placed him in handcuffs. As they led him away, Lisa and I stood side by side, the weight of the moment settling over us. "It's over," she said softly. "For now," I replied. "But at least we can finally breathe." Back at Kara's apartment, we watched the news as the footage of Drake's arrest played on repeat. The media hailed it as a victory for justice, a turning point in dismantling his empire. Lisa turned to me, her expression unreadable. "Jack, thank you. For everything." I nodded, the words failing me. As the sun rose, the exhaustion finally caught up with us. For the first time in weeks, the fight was over. Drake's empire had fallen, and while the scars of the journey would remain, so would the hope for a fresh start.